Whiskey Six in Politics, the show where we get real with people, shaping our world. And today, we got a good conversation for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I got our guest, Sherita Walton, with us here. She's a very seasoned attorney, and seasoned just because she's been in the game. She don't look a day past 25 sitting over here. I gotta admit that. But she's been in the game for over the last 2 decades, putting in a lot of work, has a lot of experience, and she's now running for a position that's very, very, very important and impacts us all. She's going to be the district attorney of Wake County. She's seen the justice system from every angle as a prosecutor, a defender, and a legal advisor. Now we're going to get into what all of that means here in a little bit as well. But more of her resume and what she really stands on, and what stands out about her story, is that she's a first generation college student, right? Also went to college and law school, and she built her career off a very tireless work ethic that she learned from her mother, who was very important and influential in her life. She came to Wake County, like many of us, looking for opportunity, and she's now ready to give back to this vibrant community that she calls home. She leads with empathy and clarity, and her vision is to create a more just and safe Wake County. An office the public can trust. We're going to pour ourselves a glass and light up a conversation here, and we're going to talk a little about her journey, her vision, her platform, and why she wants to be the district attorney of Wake County. Whiskey Six in Politics, help me welcome Sherita Walton.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing excellent here. I really appreciate you taking your time and coming over with us here today. Our episode being sponsored by the attorney in Durham, Julian Hall. We're actually at his place, so we really appreciate him allowing us to utilize this beautiful area for the podcast episode today. But we're gonna get into a little introduction about you here, Sherita. So we just want to take a moment, and like I said, welcome. And again, let's start with a little bit about your background. Now, as I said earlier, with over 2 decades of experience, like as a prosecutor and a defender and a legal advisor for the Raleigh Police Department, with that very well-rounded perspective, how do these roles help prepare you for district attorney?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to come and share who I am and
Yes, ma'am.
what I'm seeking to do. So I have been an attorney for over about 22 and a half years at this
Yes, ma'am.
point and still counting. I started my legal career out in the private sector, so
Okay.
in corporate America.
Okay.
I'm from New York originally, and so I went to both college and law school in New York. And upon finishing law school, I was very fortunate to get a job in the private sector working for what's called like big firm.
Big firm.
Big
Okay.
firm.
Big firm.
Big firm. So the practice group that I was part of, predominantly the time that I was there, represented cases dealing with white collar offenses,
Okay.
particularly white collar defense work. And in that space, the group represented subjects who were the subject of criminal investigations.
Okay.
And so lots of time in that space, some of the things that we did was, do internal investigations to kind of identify what were some of the weaknesses and
Mm.
strengths in the cases that would be brought by prosecutors. And so you have business people, white collar executives
Yes,
being
ma'am.
the subject of these types of investigations, certainly understanding what it looks like to defend somebody who could potentially have that kind of criminal exposure.
Mm.
Recognizing, what the defense looks like for a person who has a lot of money,
Mm. Right.
um, to actually, put forth a really tough defense.
Hmm.
Certainly is different than, what I see in the run of the mill stuff, in my current, positions. But certainly seeing the system from that standpoint,
Right.
from somebody who could potentially face, criminal charges, and also seeing it from the standpoint of somebody who has the means to really afford some pretty, premier legal services,
Right.
is certainly very, impactful for me to know and learn. So seeing it from that perspective, also seeing the criminal justice system from the lenses of a prosecutor.
Right.
Following my stint at Big Firm,
Okay.
I went to serve as a prosecutor. It's something that I always wanted to do. I mean, criminal law just made more sense to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know you were talking about white collar law and
Mhm.
criminal law.
Mhm.
how did Sherita even get interested in the legal field?
Yeah.
Like, right, just from the how did we even get there?
So really high school.
High school, okay.
Yeah, you know, my mom was pushing teacher for a really long time because I was one of those kids who loved putting their little dolls on the sofa and putting them out, had books and pens and was teaching them.
Mm-hmm.
So she certainly saw that as my career path. But when I was in high school, I was part of a political science sort of team, debate team.
Okay.
My one of my teachers encouraged me to take the course.
Mm.
He said that, you know, you have a lot of spirit in you. You know,
Mm.
you like to debate. You know, you like to challenge. Why don't you channel that in my classroom? And
Mhm.
so I did, and I took part in that class, and we were very successful in the debates that we were involved in locally that went
Mhm.
on to be international. So we went to DC. Our class went to DC, and we debated other schools. And we didn't get too far past that, but it was just a great experience. And I
Right.
really enjoyed learning about the law in that space.
Mm.
And just in general, being exposed to a lot of criminal law, unfortunately,
Right.
from
Right.
family. And what you
Mm.
see is just
Right.
something
Right.
that I saw the most of growing up.
Mhm.
So criminal law just made more sense to me in terms of me understanding it.
Right.
So
I got to tell you, around that time of life, I was definitely interested in law when I got to skip school and watch some episodes of Matlock.
yeah, definitely watched a few of those. Yep.
Matlock back in the day. Were there anybody in the industry, in the legal field, rather, that you looked up to that somebody that might have inspired you as well, in
Interesting.
addition to your teacher?
Interestingly enough, I didn't know any attorneys.
Mm.
So my journey started off from a space of blind spots.
Right.
And so it was very, you know, daunting, scary.
Right.
But I knew that that was a career path. I knew that there were lawyers. I
Right.
just didn't know anyone that I can say, oh, this person did this. And so I know that I can do it. It was more of like, I know this is a profession.
Right.
I like it
Mhm.
based off of my limited experience just debating law and legal principles, and said, hey, you know, why not?
Right. Right.
And that has been pretty much my story. And for a lot of the things that I've been successful in, it's like I may not necessarily know a person who's doing it,
Mhm.
but I see something within myself, so why not?
Why not? Why not?
And so that's, you know, that's what I ultimately did. Just it was blind faith, just believing in who I am, and knowing that if you work hard enough, that you know
Right.
you will eventually succeed.
Right, right. In that spirit of success, right? There are a few things or many things rather, that successful people do, and that's typically reaching out for mentors,
Hmm.
learning about whatever their career paths are that way. And with you not having examples, talk a little bit about that process, like for you, like when you're going through law school, reaching out for mentors, and just trying to make your own way. And with you being a Black woman, like that's not easy.
Right,
I
right.
know that's not easy.
And a Black woman at my age, you know, I'm 47 years
So
old.
young. Nobody
By that
27.
by that I mean back then
Yes, ma'am.
there really was not a lot of outlets, or at
Mm.
least a realization that that was something I should be reaching toward, quite
Mm.
frankly.
Okay.
And so when I say I, you know, walked around blind, I really truly did.
Mm.
And just sought out ways of getting through the situations I was going in. And so even in law school, you know, they certainly had the, you know, the Black Law Student Association, and I was joined that to kind of have some people that looked, you know, like me, and probably was going through similar experiences to kind of, you know, hopefully gravitate to that and kind of pulling us through forward together. But outside of, in terms of, you know, finding mentors, I still didn't find that in that
Mm.
space.
Mm.
But certainly when I got into, you know, corporate America, I started seeing a
Yes.
few more
Yes.
people, and they certainly reached out, and I was able to form some relationships that way. So yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's certainly important. I recognize how important it is more so now, because I
Yes, ma'am.
see um, how impactful it could be for people starting out, and they don't necessarily need to go through the same things you went through.
Right.
So kind of catching people early and letting them know that there are resources out there are mentors out there. You need to, you know, certainly try to reach out to them so that you don't have to struggle the way that I did.
Right. Right. So understanding mentorship and even getting past that, let's talk about the role of a district attorney. Now, my whiskey sticks and politics audience, it might not be entirely clear what a DA does.
Mhm.
Give us a like an explanation. Talk to us like we're 5 years old.
Fair enough.
And tell us what a DA does.
I will, but I just want to kind of go back on your previous question regarding the having seen my perspective being kind of more widened based on the roles that I've had. I've talked about the private sector position that I had and seeing it from that side. And certainly years as a prosecutor, not only in Manhattan, but also in the Wake County District Attorney's Office. And as you mentioned before, when we started, I work for the last 4.5 years for the Raleigh Police Department as their legal advisor. So I don't necessarily work for them as an employee, but I work for the city of Raleigh in the city attorney's office. And we are essentially in-house counsel to the department. So being in that role has certainly allowed me the opportunity to kind of see our criminal justice system from so many different perspectives, as I mentioned, from the defense side as a prosecutor, and now, based on law enforcement perspective, as well as from the entry point of the criminal justice system.
Okay.
And so in terms of the prosecutor, because that kind of is a really important segue,
yes,
the prosecutor plays a really important role in the criminal justice system. So the prosecutor essentially is the one who, once an arrest is made, they handle those cases. So it becomes subject is arrested, and those cases then they need to navigate through the courts.
Okay.
So the prosecutor is the individual charged with representing the government and handling how those cases proceed to the court.
Okay.
The more interesting part about the prosecutor that many people don't know is how much discretion prosecutors have.
There is a lot of discretion.
Absolutely. So
they decide whether or not even the case gets heard.
Correct. Exactly. So, an officer may decide that this person needs to be arrested and brought through the system, but the prosecutor ultimately determines whether or not that case will move forward. They can decide that it needs to be dismissed. They can say that the charges may need to be,
reduced or changed,
okay. Or upgraded. So there are just many different ways that the prosecutor can shape what justice looks like once the case comes through the court system. The district attorney is the elected body, the person in that role, and they obviously are elected by the people of Wake County. Exactly. And as the leader of that office, they will, sort of set the tone for what justice looks like for the individuals who work under them, work under that person.
So so obviously this is when people get arrested. This is when you come in. You're not the person that would defend the police if they for wrongful death or anything like that. Would you deal with those cases, or is it more or less the public being a perpetrator?
What do you mean?
Like people like if I committed a crime and got arrested, I would come see you, but you don't defend the Raleigh police like if they.
No. So anybody who's charged with a crime will be the individual that we would be looking at to determine what that case looks like.
Okay.
From the state side, from the government side of it. So, and that person who was arrested would have their lawyer, right? And so when you think about it that way, the people of the Wake County needs a lawyer. So we're the people's attorney. The people's attorney is essentially the best way of looking at it. So the defendant, whoever is charged with it, particularly depending on what type of crime it is, they would have their attorney.
Gotcha.
But the people need an attorney, right?
We do.
Because sometimes lots of crimes will impact the community as a whole, particularly violent offenses. And there might be, victim-specific crimes, and certainly you'll be advocating for that victim, but ultimately your interest is the common good, the people of Wake County.
Right. And I know that's, crime has been a real big topic lately, right? And so I think a district attorney that represents us is something that we need, like, especially for a time like, times like today. There was some, recent school shootings, that sort of thing. When it comes to, I guess, trying to protect the public, how does someone how do I grade my DA? How do I know my district attorney is doing a good job?
Right. That's a very good question. The role of the district attorney plays an important part in public safety, right? So ultimately, when charges or when a case is brought to the district attorney, their job is to look at the case, make sure and determine whether or not it's something that they can in fact prosecute, make sure the evidence is there, and hopefully, move towards a just outcome in that particular case. And so how effective they are will dictate whether or not, you ultimately will be saved. So if they're doing a good job, we will more than likely be in a position where people are going to be safe, particularly if the case has, the evidence in the case is concrete and
Right.
good. Then as a result, the district attorney will be in a position to help keep our community safe. So the law enforcement are the individuals who make the arrests.
Right.
Prosecutor is the one who takes that case and develop it and make sure that it's primed for the actual jury if it ultimately goes to that.
Mhm.
And if the outcome is a conviction, then that person will ultimately be held accountable for that.
Excuse me.
And if it's a particularly violent crime like a homicide, then that person will be off the street for a really long time, thereby keep our community safe. So how do you determine whether or not your district attorney how do you grade them? You can grade based on, how many convictions they have, but ultimately I don't think that's really an important metrics or measurement, because ultimately the jury determines whether or not, the district attorney has proven its case. And
Right.
sometimes juries will render a decision based on the facts and evidence. Sometimes they don't.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I mean, it's, you just don't know. I
Mhm.
think the way you determine if your district attorney is effective is how much trust I believe the community places in that person. Like, meaning if you go and you speak to your constituents and they feel like they trust what you're doing, that you're going to be doing the right thing,
That's
that to
right.
me would be an effective measuring tool as to whether or not the district attorney is doing what they're supposed to do. Because your goal is to represent the interests of the community, but also to do the right thing.
Gotcha.
And that doing the right thing may translate into a not guilty verdict. We just don't
Mhm.
know. So your goal is to look for the just outcome, not just for convictions.
Not just for convictions. I'm glad to hear you say that, because a lot of times when it comes to the legal system, we know Black and brown people typically don't have the best experiences, right, or the best outcomes at times. But it's good to know that a district attorney, it's not like their chief focus is to throw and lock everybody up. So like I'm breaking down walls for myself as I'm gaining understanding. So I appreciate you explaining it like this. And I want to talk a little bit about your campaign's platform, like your core platform. You had 5 key priorities, if I got that right, including promoting public safety, pursuing effective criminal justice reform, right? Um, so if we start with public safety, what is your strategy for prioritizing the prosecution of violent crimes like gun violence or domestic abuse?
So that's the one benefit of having served in a different office, is that you realize that there's more than one way to get the work done.
Yes, ma'am.
So having worked in another prosecutorial office like Manhattan District Attorney's Office, it certainly allowed me to see that there is other alternatives in terms of how you manage cases. So one of the things that I would like to do in terms of prioritizing violent crimes is just make sure that those cases are getting to the people who are going to be handling it
Yeah.
sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Lots of times there are, screeners who look at cases, and it may take some time for those cases to ultimately get to the person who is going to be the one to, handle that case for trial purposes or
Gotcha.
disposition purposes. But just making sure that, when a crime is happening, particularly a violent offense,
Mhm.
whoever is going to be handling that disposition of that case, no matter what, if it's going to be a trial or if it's going to be a negotiated plea, making sure that person's getting that case as soon as possible.
Mm.
And also making sure that we are tracking where those cases are and having, periodic sort of status conferences as it relates to those cases, to make sure that they are, moving along in a way that is going to, get to a resolution faster. Because my experience
Mhm.
has taught me cases don't get better as more time goes by.
Mhm.
Because you have people, particularly in violent offenses like a gun case, meaning a shooting, lots of times witnesses become, wary, and they
Understandable.
not as interested.
Right.
Maybe about 5 or 7 or maybe a year later.
Mm.
And so making sure that we are addressing these cases and getting to them as soon as possible in terms of the person who's going to be handling it for disposition purposes, or getting it sooner, making sure that we're keeping track of these cases, I think will make us more effective in that space.
Right. What causes a case to get, I guess, caught up or delayed? What are some of those pitfalls that you're going to be working against
Okay,
or
so
trying to implement?
it's just that all the cases are together, right?
It's
So
just a
it's
number of cases that could slow it up.
correct. I mean, it's more of like, well, on day one, you may get, 50 cases. And out of those 50 cases, maybe 4 of them are, the violent offenses.
Yes, ma'am.
So you obviously have 50 cases to deal with. And I'm just exaggerating the number, but just so you can get the point, you may have 50 cases to deal with, but these 4 are, particularly ones that you want to make sure that we are keeping eyes on.
Absolutely.
But when you have 50, sometimes you're just trying to get through your 50 cases. And so recognizing or identifying those cases early on, sort of pulling them out and making sure that we are looking at them, consistently and periodically so that they're being handled, like they're supposed to.
So with Wake County, like as it stands right now, do they like with the process they have in place, do they got a pretty good process in place currently, or is it something that they might need improvement?
Oh, absolutely. You can always come in there and improve things.
Absolutely.
One of the things I was thinking about in my mind is what's called vertical prosecution.
Vertical prosecution. We'll probably do a little segue. Vertical prosecution. Let it crawl across the screen.
And essentially,
let's talk about it.
It's essentially where when a case comes in, the person, like I was mentioning before, who's going to handle that case gets it right away, as opposed to somebody else getting it and it getting filtered. So you get it, you're screening it, then you send it up to this person.
Just somebody jumping right on it.
Exactly. Okay. So if it's my case, I'm getting it literally the couple days after it actually happens. And this way I have more interaction with the officer who's bringing that case, with the victims or the witnesses involved in that case, just a lot sooner putting your hands on it. Whereas horizontal is more of like, kind of more, everybody's just kind of getting cases and not necessarily going to be handling that case from the time that it comes in to the time that it's being resolved.
So it sounds like once we can get an efficient process in handling these cases, it sounds like we can definitely be more effective in our role as district attorney. That's what it sounds like.
Right. And don't get me wrong, there are some cases already that has that sort of style in place, but having it more of a doing a more formalized process, I think would be helpful, and expanding the type of crimes that are handled that way.
Gotcha. Now, you've also stated a commitment to fostering transparency and expanding access to diversion and prevention programs. How do you plan to balance the need for tough on crime policies with reforms aimed at reducing recidivism?
Well, first of all, I think it's important for people to understand how diversion programs. Diversion means essentially alternatives to the way that you traditionally see prosecution happening.
Yes, ma'am.
Helping people understand that when you're getting to the root cause of why a crime occurred, and dealing with that and addressing it, more than likely will reassure that particular crime is not going to happen. At least that subject who is accused of it is not going to reoffend, because you're addressing why that person is offending.
Right.
And ultimately what that's going to happen is that's going to make us safer, right? Because if you're dealing with the root cause of it and that person is less likely to offend, then now we don't have that person offending. And so ultimately now we're going to be safer. So people need to realize that just because we're talking about diversion programs, it's not meaning we're trying to be soft on crime. What we're trying to be is smart.
Smart about crime.
Smart about crime. Because what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not having people continuing to come through the system, or having a situation where people are continuing to engage in the activity they are engaging in, particularly nonviolent offenses, and clearly offenses that are fueled by typically drug addiction, substance abuse, or mental health disorders. So in those cases, dealing with the underlying issues will ultimately turn back into a more safer community.
Right.
And so you balance it by recognizing that we're not talking about one against the other.
Right.
We're talking about these things can actually coexist in a way that's going to ultimately keep our community safe.
Right.
And certainly for, violent offenses, or offenses that threaten the safety of our community, you got to be tough, right? And you got to make sure that you are holding people accountable, because that is what justice dictates. But certainly there is space for in situations where it's non-violent offenses and offenses that are fueled by some addiction, that dealing with those issues through diversion would be appropriate and would ultimately continue to keep our community safe.
I appreciate that response. I think a lot of crime can be linked to poverty,
Yeah.
right? And the lack of some social resources, right? Are there any diversion programs that you support that you can let us know about today?
See, diversion I support a lot of diversion programs. I support effective diversion programs.
Yes, ma'am.
So some of the ones that are more common is the ones that do address, drug or substance abuse disorders and mental health
Right.
disorder. So those are the ones that I'm most familiar with.
Okay.
But I support all effective criminal diversion programs because ultimately that is going to in that cycle where people are going to keep coming back through the system
Right.
and ultimately keep us safe.
Right.
But certainly you want to make sure there's accountability there and effectiveness as well.
All right. And so talking about effectiveness and accountability, Raleigh is growing.
It is.
Raleigh is growing. And just like you spoke about, cases they get backed up. Now we want the district attorney to be more effective. How do you see Raleigh's growth rate affecting your role if you are elected?
Well, I mean, it's going to grow and it's going to continue to grow. People like me, right, who came here, it's going to continue to come because this is a place where people feel like there's opportunity to really have a better quality of life. And so one of the things that we need to do is prepare for that because it's an eventuality. It's going to happen. So we need to prepare ourselves by making sure that we are investing in our staff, making sure that we have the numbers that we need so that we can provide effective service, to our community as a whole. We need to obviously also be, supporting our staff so they are ready to handle the growth that comes with the community growing as it is. So, those are the things. And the General Assembly is the one who decides, how many, assistant district attorneys are going to be staffed for a prosecutorial district. So certainly we'll be appealing to our legislatures so that they can understand that the growth that comes with Wake County and recognizing, what we need in order to be effective in that space.
Right. Well, understanding community engagement being another area of focus, because in politics, trust is key.
It is.
And you've mentioned building trust through openness and community listening sessions and things like that. When doing some research on you, what specific steps will you take to ensure that the public not only understand your office's policies and how prosecutorial decisions are made?
Right. Information is power, right? I think people, especially now when there's so much exposure to any and everything, you have to make sure you are providing a narrative, right? And you're providing information. So people know, or at least have something that they can say, well, this is what is coming out of the district attorney's office. So it's really important to me for us to at least have at a minimum a website specific to the Wake County District Attorney's Office.
Okay.
Not just, District Attorney's Office in general across the state, but a website specific to what the men and women do at the District Attorney's Office that serves the Wake County community.
Perfect.
So having that, I mean, people just expect that there's going to be some website of just about anything, right?
Everything now.
It's
2025.
Yes. So something specific.
So there isn't a website.
Well, I'm not saying that there's not, but there's not nothing specific to the office.
Gotcha,
Does that make
got it.
sense?
Perfect.
And so making sure that, we have at a minimum that, and that we are operating from a place of vision and mission. I'm really a big proponent of that we need to have a vision and we need to have a mission statement and objective so that we are all collectively, meaning the men and women who's doing the work, are on the same page. And that information is then also provided to the community so they understand what the mission and vision is and hold us accountable to it, right? And that is really important to me. And so that would be one thing, right? So have that information available, also what the policies are going to be, and make sure that again is at a minimum on the website and has that information. Also, just basically making sure people have information about what it is that we do on a day in and day out basis.
Yes.
How many cases are we resolving in maybe in a week or 2 weeks or whatever the case may be, so they know what we are doing. How many of them resulted in convictions? How many acquittals did we have? Just so you can understand, this is what my district attorney's office is doing. Because we at the end of the day, I as the district attorney represents the people, right? And so we're accountable to them. So they should know exactly what is going on.
Oh, that's fair.
And on the community side, I'm a big proponent of proximity. You got to be in there, right? So you have to be in a position where you are up close and putting yourself out there to take questions, to provide information. in my journey, to be DA, I have spent a lot of time going to different community events,
Right.
and different, groups and meetings where they have invite their elected officials there to speak to them,
Right.
to understand what's going on. So I would certainly want to make sure that I am there, a representative from my office is also there to also speak to what I'm doing, to use that platform that's already there to hold, their representatives accountable. And I would just, as another elected official, would want to make sure that we have a space for that as well. And if there are gaps, then let's create those opportunities where we will host something so that the community has an opportunity to ask questions and for us to provide information to them about what it is we're doing. To your point, to talk to them not talk to them like that they are in elementary school, but you got to break it down so people understand. And you want to be able to do that.
The late great Joe Madison, he would say, "Put it where the goats can get it."
Oh, exactly.
I don't know. You familiar
I am
with
not
Joe
familiar
Madison?
with that one.
So Joe Madison, he had a radio show. He's known as the Black Eagle. He was on Sirius XM Urban View. You got other great people on that lineup like Karen Hunter, Clay Kane, Larry Daniel Favor. She's a civil rights attorney as well. It's great lineup, people to look out for. But no, Joe Madison, he was someone that if he was talking to you, he'd be proud to be affiliated with somebody like you. I gotta just say that talking to you, you've talked about being open, how people can access you. That's typically opposite for what most politicians. It seems like once they get elected, you can't get a hold of them, or you can't really get in touch with them. Talk to me about how important being able to access you is. Like how important is that to you?
Very. Let's start with number one. I'm not a politician. Okay.
Let's get it.
Never have been. I recognize that this role, it is an elected position, obviously, and it's on the ballot. So that's politics. And I know this is your show, so I'm not going to disparage politics, but I am not a politician. So I don't come into this role with whatever the expectation or what the practice was for most politicians. My vision is to make sure that our office not only is effective in what it is that they do, but also is trusted. That is really important to me. Right. And I think the only way you can do that is by being accessible. I've talked to people about this, like being in a relationship that's been, we've had some issues in our relationship, right?
Right.
And so when you have some issues in your relationship, you're going to have to kind of be transparent about what's going on. Absolutely. And so when, the person in your relationship is demanding information, you need to be available to provide that information at any given moment. And lots of times you need to take that initiative and put it out there. This way you're showing the person that you're in this relationship with that you are committed. Right. And I want people to understand and recognize that I am committed to them. Right. I'm committed to making sure that we are doing what we can do, our role in keeping us safe, but also that you can trust that we're doing what we're doing. My concern is that a lot of our institutions now, when you vote and you don't get the person you want in the office, you at least think at the minimum, well, they'll get the job done, right? It doesn't feel that way anymore. It doesn't. It's like you don't get your person and you don't know what's going to happen in that role. And that is really concerning. And so we really do need to build that trust back so that people can feel confident that we are doing our part in keeping folks safe.
I really appreciate that. Some people may say, well, she's a mom. She's got so many other obligations going on. What can you tell the people of Wake County about your work ethic and how you're going to approach this role that's going to make it a great fit for someone like you, regardless of your other obligations?
Well, I appreciate that. No one's going to work harder than me. To a fault, that's just who I am. That's right. It comes from not being in place where I have a lot of people that I can look up to. So I had to really figure out things on my own. And that requires, working really, really hard. And even in this space, my journey to be the next elected DA, I am working extremely hard. Sure. And I'm not saying it to be boastful, but I don't know how to do anything else. It's just
talk about it.
It's just that's just who I am. It's part of my matrix, my build. And so I don't know how else to do it. And so that's what I will say. Yes, I have a family and I love my family and they are very supportive and I appreciate them and I'm going to need them to do this. But they understand, the assignment, and they're going to be supportive. I'm not going to, go crazy, meaning, do something that's going to impact my own mental health. But certainly I am going to work hard for the residents of our community to be a DA that they can trust and a DA that's going to do everything in my power to keep our community safe.
Right, right. I really want to thank you so much for coming and answering these questions here today and taking time to tell the people of Wake County why you're going to be a good fit for this role, a lot about your background and even what a district attorney does. I didn't know a lot about that, so I appreciate you shedding some light on that for me. But let's put away the formal questions for a little bit, right?
Okay, let me get some water.
And obviously, with a show like Whiskey Six and Politics, we definitely try to get into sort of how people would relax and unwind. Politics can be so heavy and so serious. So when Sherita's relaxing after putting in all the hours for the good people of Wake County, if you have a glass, a beverage, or something to drink, what are you reaching for?
That bottled water you just.
Nice and sober.
Yes, I do not drink.
No, understandable.
So water.
Water.
I try to make sure I stay hydrated, especially now. But to unwind, I have a really strong faith base.
That's why I was like maybe something spiritual.
Yes,
that you get into.
Absolutely. And so really Sundays is how I recharge. When I go to church and hear the word, that is how I recharge myself. And just sort of connecting with what I know God wants me to do is how I for me makes me unwind and get back up on it.
Understand. So how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance? Like understanding, DA, you got the hours that you got to put in, you got to come home, take care of the family, and then a whole husband that you got to deal with, right? We can be a handful sometimes as husbands. I understand just a little bit. How do you manage all that? Talk to me.
I just do it. I don't really have a science to it. There's no equation I can sort of spit out for you, no formula. It's just you get up, you do the best that you can, you try to make time for everything, and you hope that you're successful. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've um, been successful in my efforts, but I certainly do try.
Right. I know we got to try to make a balance. It can't be all work and no play, right? But when we do have very serious jobs, I think it's just important to have an outlet.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Before we wrap up here today, and again, thank you so much for coming here and talking to us at Whiskey Six and Politics. But before we wrap up here, tell us, look in the camera and talk to the people of Wake County and tell them when elections?
March 3rd.
Elections, Wake County DA coming up March 3rd. Tell them why they need to vote for Sherita Walton.
First of all, you need to vote. I mean, that's really important. It's an important role, and it has an impact for just a lot of people. I think a lot of people always say that I'm not justice involved, but at the end of the day, we don't wake up knowing if we're going to be a victim of a crime. We don't wake up knowing if we're going to be accused of a crime, or that we're going to be a witness to a crime. I think it's important that people recognize that this race impacts us all. Our current district attorney, Lauren Freeman, is not seeking reelection. And that seat is open, and it is an opportunity to move that office forward. I have seen, like I mentioned before, our system from so many different lenses, and it has afforded me the opportunity to see the whole picture.
Yes, ma'am.
And not just the individual components. And I think in this day and age, with all that we are seeing, we need to have a person in that office that's going to see things from multiple angles, because it's going to come from different places and we need to be prepared as we move forward. And maybe 20, 50 years ago, it would have been fine just to have a person looking from one lens, but not this day and age. And that is something that I bring to this particular race. It's an important work. I'm excited about it. I want to do my part in helping our community be a fair and safer place for people to live, work, and raise their families.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here. Someone that's coming with a lens of being able to see it from all angles, that wants to look out for every family in Wake County, not just the people with money, right? And she has a message of community engagement, and she wants to make sure that the office runs efficiently and smoothly, and she wants to be a candidate that you can trust. So please, please, thank you, Sherita. And when you get a chance to vote Miss Walton, District Attorney, Wake County. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Whiskey, Sticks, and Politics with Rashad Sullivan.
We really appreciate you coming by. And one of the things that we've done, obviously, with Whiskey, Sticks, and Politics, we've got some a gift made for the people we interview. I know you don't drink food, but when you need a table coaster for the bottled water, please feel free to use these. Got a set for you, one for the husband. So when y'all want to relax and drink some water on the back porch, I want you to use these.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Rashad.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.